Hey there, community bankers. Welcome back to the Correspondent podcast from Independent Correspondent Bankers Bank. I'm your host, Madison Kaplinger, Marketing Associate for ICBB. Today, we're joining a conversation that you've probably heard a lot about recently, no matter where you are or what you listen to. Artificial intelligence, or AI. Whether you find all the new developments exciting or scary, AI is here and it opens up a world of possibilities. So I sat down with Eric Cook, a digital strategist for a WSI digital marketing agency serving community banks, to talk about the possibilities and the challenges of AI for banks. Eric also mentors community bankers through his group The Linked Banker and publishes a newsletter called The Recovering Banker that I encourage you to check out. He's extremely knowledgeable about not just bank marketing, but how AI can add value across operational areas of your community bank. This was such a fun conversation, and I know you'll walk away with ideas to implement in your bank. Please welcome Eric Cook to the podcast. Hey, community bankers, I am here with Eric Cook from WSI. How are you, Eric?
I am great. How are you doing?
I am good. So, start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional experience as a marketer for community banks.
Excellent. Yeah, I kind of say I have it in my blood, whether that's right or wrong. My father was actually a community banker in Michigan for 33 years. And growing up, I never really wanted to be a banker. I'm what I think a lot of the industry referred to as an accidental banker. I went away to college and escaped my small hometown, figured I would spread my wings and go on to bigger and better places, and ended up coming home and working alongside my father at Marshall Savings Bank in Marshall, Michigan for 13 years. He retired. I stuck around for another 2 after an acquisition. And during that time became very appreciative of everything that goes into and what you give back as a community banker, and started connecting the dots as to why dad was gone a lot in the evenings, and service clubs and volunteer work and things on the weekend to help pick up the park and stuff that he was doing in and around the community. It's what a community banker does. And being able to be present and getting in a position towards the end of my career of being that go-to person that people would ask questions of, and understand, what's going on in the community, help me understand what's happening with the economy. And he was really good at the financial side, and I just happened to fall into the technology and the marketing side, and we complemented each other really well. Which led to our first website back in 1995, which is, I think, one of the first small community bank websites out there, and kind of explored and got the ability to explore lots of other different areas throughout the bank marketing world in my 15 years as a community banker myself. So I could go on. I feel like I might have gone on a little long there, but lots to unpack as it relates to me and community banking.
Yeah, for sure. I totally get the accidental banker thing. I fall into that category as well. And I know a lot of people who do.
Yeah, I even gave my notice once. I sat down with dad and drafted a letter of resignation. I've always been very sensitive to nepotism, and having my father as the CEO, didn't want anybody to think that I was getting any special treatment. Made sure that the board saw my resume before they hired me, but I actually drafted a letter of resignation and was going to move to North Carolina and race for a bicycle team in Charlotte. And at the 11th hour, the responsible little figure on my shoulder whispered in my ear and said, health insurance, 401k, yeah, racing a bike would be great, but where's that really going to take you? And I wasn't good enough to go pro. So I recanted, and he was very gracious and didn't rub my nose in it or say, I told you so. And that's probably when I became more of an intentional banker, because I said, I'm gonna make a career of this. But I still love riding bikes, so I guess I still have that going for me.
Right. Yeah. So you and I met at the Community Bankers Association of Ohio's Marketing Directors Forum, and the topic that kept coming up and is coming up all over the marketing world across industry is AI and Chat GPT. But it's not, it has implications way beyond marketing. That's just where you and I land. So
Absolutely.
so, for listeners who may be really new to the AI conversation, give us some background on what it is and why it's become such a recurring topic among industries.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people hear AI and they immediately think of Chat GPT because that's been in the news, and rightfully so. It's a very powerful tool that's doing some pretty amazing things. Um, but artificial intelligence, machine learning to a certain extent has really been around. And I remember back in the day when I was still a banker. So this goes back 15, 16, 17, 18 years. Um, we were a Jack Henry shop, and we actually utilized a service from Jack Henry called Yellow Hammer. And that was a predictive intelligence tool that allowed for us to analyze customer transactions to determine the propensity or likelihood of fraud. And is it something that somebody has done before? Are they shopping outside of their market area? Are they buying something that they haven't typically bought in the past? And that's going back probably 20 years because it was in place well before we started using it. So the concept of artificial intelligence and using data to help you make better decisions and to streamline and simplify your life is not something that's brand new. But ChatGPT is the first platform that consumers have been able to access that turns that process into more of a conversational experience. And much like using chat on Facebook or LinkedIn or on your phone to go back and forth with a friend, you now have the ability with an interface to have a conversation with a technology that answers your questions, gives you feedback, will listen to you, will make recommendations, will respond to questions. And it I think is humanizing, if I want to maybe be so bold as to say humanizing the technology, because I know to some people that scares the bejesus out of them, because um, we don't want this technology to become human. And I've seen a lot of the Terminator memes of Skynet taking over the world, and all of a sudden we become inconsequential human life forms, and the technology just does what it needs to do to exist, and we're no longer needed. So I don't want to paint that dystopian future by any stretch of the imagination. But using these tools to help us refine a thought process or brainstorm on ideas or build out a policy or a procedure or help create content. Artificial intelligence tools for not a lot of monetary investment are available now to help us do an awful lot. And I often refer to AI as helping you build that really, really good first draft. um, I don't think anybody that has been spending time in AI is ever recommending, at least at this point, that what you get from an artificial intelligence platform is good to publish or present or share or use as is. It gives you a really good rough draft to be able to get a good starting point. And in most of the cases, when I've used it to help me create content or build out information, it's not giving me anything that I've said, oh my gosh, I would have never have thought of that. But if tasked with putting down 10 things, I probably wouldn't have thought of it because it wouldn't have been top of mind. But it's not giving me something brand spanking new most of the time. It's just bringing in the things that otherwise I would have maybe not remembered, or it would have taken me maybe a couple of days of a scratch pad next to my computer to jot down and say, here's one, here's one, here's one. It accelerates that process significantly. So hopefully that helped at least set the stage a little bit on the world of AI.
No, for sure. And, I'm friends with marketers and copywriters, and I started my career as a copywriter, and their big complaint right now is, like, oh, my clients are trying to fire me and just use Chat GPT. Well, what usually happens is they put out something as is that they got from Chat GPT, and it's incorrect or it's biased or something, and then they come back to the copywriter with their tail between their legs and they have to be like, hey,
Yep.
so
Yep. Well, it's interesting that you say that. You know, I mentioned I built my first website back in 1995 for marshallsavings.com. And I taught myself HTML. I had a buddy from high school that founded a dial-up internet service provider in my hometown. And we hung out and basically taught each other HTML. And I came up with marshallsavings.com and released it. And, for what it was at the time, it was okay. And then tools like Microsoft Front Page, and I used a platform from a company called Sausage Software out of Australia called Hot Dog, and then you had platforms like Squarespace and Wix and WordPress. And these tools came along in the industry, which I wasn't in because I was a banker just playing around on the internet. But there was that fear that web developers would go out of business because now anybody could buy Dreamweaver from Adobe or Front Page from Microsoft and build their own website. So why do you need a web developer? Why do you need a designer if you've got access to Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator when you used to have to take really good pictures? So what's the relevancy of a photographer anymore? And all of those tools have come and gone. They've improved, they've evolved, but the skills behind them have continued to evolve as well. And the humans that have those skills are still very much in demand. You can build a free website using Wix, but if you want a really good website and specific hosting and special security, and you're a bank and that is of concern with you, you're probably not going to go to Wix and create a free website for your bank. You're going to hire a professional to build that out for you, even though the ability to do one for free. Now, mom and pop shop or the local hairdresser or somebody else that maybe isn't as concerned, that might create some threat to someone that's building kind of low grade and not providing a lot of value. But that's the same thing as you relate kind of to your AI. If somebody just wants something really simple and easy, like some captions for a Facebook post, you can get that done using artificial intelligence really easy. And there's not a lot of threat to it not coming out really great because there's not a lot of complexity to it. But when you start thinking of deeper level content and having good subject matter expertise and knowing what it is that the final product needs to do, who it needs to influence, not what it needs to do, who it needs to influence, the message that you're trying to convey, the action that you want somebody to take after they read it, that's still very much going to rely on a professional that is just using AI as one more tool, like a Grammarly, to make sure that your commas and your periods and your punctuation are all in the right place. It's one more tool that a copywriting professional is going to have in their quiver to produce something really awesome for you as the end customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we've been talking about marketing, and I don't know about you, I could nerd out all day on that.
Oh, yeah.
But,
This is going to be a 4-hour podcast, right?
oh yeah, yeah. Buckle up,
Buckle up,
guys.
everybody. Go get your
Yeah.
popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as community banking across areas of operation, have you been seeing community banks start to use AI in their operations, or have you seen more resistance to adopting some of these technologies?
I've seen it almost kind of a barbell approach. And in that, I mean, I see a cluster of banks that have embraced it. And they're on one side. And then, like a barbell, you've got the skinny connector between the next lump on the other side, the weight. And then you've got some that have said, we can't use it in our office. ChatGPT is blocked or banned. We can't get to things like 11 Labs or Phrase or Copy AI or Jasper or any of those. And in the middle, there doesn't seem to be a lot of gray area. It's either we're going to use it and we understand it, or we're not, and we're not going to take the time to figure out how we can embrace it. And I think the goal is to try to get more to that side where you can embrace it with the understanding of what you do and don't want to put into it. things that are confidential in nature, things that are sensitive or PII that have any sort of identifiable information back to your customers, definitely don't be throwing that into chat gpt to do an analysis or to give you a summary of information, because you're putting information into a model that's being built based off of the information that's being put into the model and the responses that that model provides. So, but building out things from an operational perspective, we've seen, and I actually talked to one banker, they use ChatGPT to rewrite all of their job descriptions because their job descriptions had not really been touched for several years and didn't have the relevance to today's banking professional. Things around technology, lenders, leveraging social platforms for personal branding, such as LinkedIn, um, didn't have any of that. So there's no personally identifiable information. There's no confidential data. You're building a job description, and you can work with ChatGPT conversationally and take the information and put it in, say, provide me with a more contemporary version of this job description that takes into consideration, and then fill in the blank as a bank what things have changed in your market, in your area. Maybe you're hiring for someone in the back office and their job is going to be more responsible for things like digital engagement, online account opening, chat-based customer service. Your job description might not have any of that. So you can ask the technology to incorporate those as elements that are part of that job description, and give you a really good draft that you can then use and personalize, to be able to then go out and find the right candidates that are going to be a good fit for your organization and provide you with the skill sets that you're looking for in order to make sure that you're hiring for what you want today and tomorrow versus what you were hiring for yesterday, last week, last month, last year, and so on.
On the far end of the barbell for, your community banks that understand AI and are kind of starting to embrace it in certain areas, you mentioned job descriptions, but um, what other specific applications have you seen community banks implement to kind of streamline their operations, increase their efficiency, or what could banks be doing that you're not seeing them embrace yet?
Sure. I know one bank just popped into my head. They've been doing some internal training, leveraging the knowledge that ChatGPT can put together. So they were rolling out a digital wallet solution. I think they were bringing in Zelle, and they had to put together an agenda and some training material for their staff. And so they hopped into ChatGPT, provided it with some background, and you're creating an agenda for a community bank staff meeting to announce the introduction of a new digital wallet service leveraging Zelle for person-to-person payment, something along those lines, and allow for the platform to basically create the agenda and the talking points and the things that are needed. Um, a lot of the platforms now, at the time of this recording, ChatGPT has paused their browse functionality for GPT-4, which is part of their Plus paid subscription model, which allows for the ChatGPT engine to be able to connect directly to the internet and get access to current info. Whereas without that, you're limited to historical data. I think it's September of 2021, if I'm not mistaken. But there's abilities where you can use plugins, extensions in Chrome, for example, Web Chat GPT. Google now has Bard, which is their version, which is connected to the internet. So being able to even ask it questions about things that are happening right now and relevant information. So if there is something that was new that Zelle has recently introduced, or better capabilities, or increased fraud protection, or transactional capacity, um, being able to use the tools and having them connect to the internet gives you the ability to even get more relevant current information. I know a lot of banks are still using tools. I know I mentioned Yellow Hammer, even beyond that, as far as detecting transactions and other sorts of anomalies, starting to take data and putting it into those platforms. So you think of a traditional credit analyst analyzing customer financials, looking at information, trying to determine, um, you know, potential risk within the financials of a customer, where things might be trending. There's AI now that's providing the ability to do that. And even one of the more recent features within Chat GPT 4 is their code interpreter feature, which, while code seems like you're thinking about HTML code and all the nerdy stuff, it's really better described as a data interpreter, where you can take information, anonymize it, of course, don't put customer information in there, but replace Eric Cook with customer A and B and C and D, and you have a key at the back end that's on your side that you are able to then line things up. But you can take data now and put it inside of GPT-4 with that code interpreter functionality that will analyze that spreadsheet for you. It'll analyze that data. Tell me what interesting insights you've gleaned off of this. Um, what are some of the trends that we should be concerned with? What do you see as being positive? Where are some of the risks? What are the questions that we're not asking? What else can you tell me about the data that you're looking at? And it provides you with um, insight into that data set that, depending on the size of the data, could take you hours upon hours to analyze. And even if it's only doing 80% of the work for you, you still have the ability to save 80% of the work. And that's just another area where I think, as these tools evolve, we're going to start uncovering more and more opportunities of how we can take some of the mundane, um, non-value added functions of our jobs and automate those to be able to get us to the point where we can humanize that data, offer our own individual unique insights around it, and then give us the ability to be able to make observations and recommendations that are going to be relevant to the business and relevant to our customers and relevant to our communities.
So thank you for that answer, because you hit on several things that I think are important. You mentioned not just streamlining operations and increasing efficiency by analyzing data, like for credit purposes, but also mining that data for insights and being able to personalize the customer experience. As I know, that's such a huge topic right now in banking. People want personal, especially as our technology has kind of evolved to allow that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think personalization, we work with a number of marketing automation platforms that provide the ability, if you've got a contact or a lead or a record inside of the system and you've identified it as a particular persona, you can dynamically change content that's on a landing page. You can dynamically change content that exists in an email blast. So if I have Madison listed as a marketing professional and I've got somebody else that's not listed as a persona because I haven't qualified them, I can make sure that I send the same exact email out to my entire base, but Madison is getting information in that introductory block that's written specifically for the 15 people that I have defined as marketing personas, marketing directors. And so your email, even though it's coming directly off of the same platform, is now, hey, as a marketing director in the banking industry, these are likely some of the challenges that you face on a day in and day out basis. So now it speaks to you because, hey, I am a marketing, professional in the banking industry. Wow, this is super relevant to me. As opposed to someone that we don't know, that content might come across and say, in the banking industry, there's a lot of things that we need to be concerned about. There's marketing, there's credit, there's risk, there's technology, there's HR. But at the end of the day, da, 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 da. So the introductory paragraph, when we don't know the persona, we can't personalize it, gives us the ability to try to be a catch-all, but working close to getting people to identify based off of their activities and their actions and the links that they're clicking to say, hey, here's a couple of other people that are engaging with marketing content. Maybe these are people like Madison that need to be labeled as marketing professionals. And we don't have to manually do that any longer. We can plug that into AI, where AI can take that over and go, these are people that the AI now feels are marketing professionals, because it's tying in maybe even other data sources, looking out at LinkedIn, checking your job description or your title, and making some of those assignments for us automatically, almost automagically, if I'm going to invent a word, although I think that word's been used many times before, so I'm not going to claim ownership to it. But it just happens without you necessarily having to do anything for that change to take place, or that field to get updated, or that persona to be applied. And so, when I think of data personalization, that's one of many examples that pops into my head, that I'm excited as these technologies start communicating with each other through APIs and being a little bit more integration or integrated. I think we're going to start seeing some more of that taking place. And it's going to eventually become, in a large part, transparent to us. We're not going to even think about it when it happens. And I've got some dings going off, you've got some dings going off, we're hyper connected to the rest of the world, whether we like it or not. But the mobile device that we have probably sitting on a desk right next to us right now is such a powerful communication tool that if we were to have introduced that years ago and try to comprehend everything that that device could do, we would be very overloaded. But now we just assume communication, email, video, education, all the things that this device does for us. It's just an accepted part of our reality. It's baked into society. And that's where I think AI and some of the things that are going to be a part of this evolution are going to take us. We're not going to know a world without it being consciously relevant any longer, because ChatGPT's got us thinking about it now. Whereas in the past, we never really thought about it. It was just there doing its thing.
Right, yeah. I mean, we've had, Siri and Alexa for several years, and
Absolutely.
those are AIs. Websites have had, chat functions for years, and we haven't thought about that.
Yep.
But yeah, what you were saying about, personalization, bring that to community banks. I mean, they've got data on, income levels and credit scores, and,
Oh, sure.
what products you have with that bank, and AI can group those and be like, okay, what's relevant
Yeah.
to people in this income bracket, or like,
Yep.
oh, you got a mortgage in the last year, that these are things that might interest you or needs you might have.
Yeah. I was always amazed by the amount of information back in the day when I was at the bank that customers would provide us, rightfully so, because buying a home is a very involved and complicated and important process. But all the information that the 1003 collected about a customer, and how little we did with that data, one, because we didn't want to seem overzealous or intrusive. We didn't want to be that, pokey salesperson that, hey, you got your checking account at the credit union. Why don't you bring it over here? Hey, you've got your investments over at Edward Jones. Why don't you bring it here? We didn't want to be that person. But I think, thinking about how we phrased those conversations, we were going about it all wrong. Instead of, I noticed that you have accounts at multiple locations. Did you know that if you were to consolidate those, it'd make paying your mortgage a lot easier? We actually give a discount on auto and consumer loans for automatic payments coming out. So there could have been some reasons where we could have framed it as, this is a benefit to you. This is an advantage. This will help simplify your life. But we never did that because we were so worried about offending the customer. We were just happy that we got the mortgage loan. But if you were to take all the information that is on that 1003 and put it into a well-trained AI program that could look for opportunities, much like you said, look at their credit card debt, look at their other investments, look at their other deposit relationships, analyze their transaction trends, and come back with a personalized banking recommendation to be able to help that individual, hey, how'd you like to save, 2.5 hours a week or a month or whatever the number ends up being. There's ways to be able to take that data and analyze it and make those recommendations. And sometimes if AI is making the recommendation and you're there to support it and back it up, it might be easier for the technology to present this as an opportunity and have the customer take advantage of it. And then you're there just to fulfill that request. I don't want to replace the human in the process, but if asking makes you uncomfortable, there's ways that some of that could be potentially automated with the ability for things like onboarding and other sorts of proactive outreach efforts.
Community bankers, what if I told you there was an event where you and your staff could learn from expert speakers on the most in-demand payment topics, network with other community bankers, and hear about the latest from ICBB? Now, what if I told you this event was free? It's not too good to be true, it's Boom. Our annual Bank Operations Opportunities Meeting, or Boom, is coming up on October 6th at the beautiful Berry Hill Mansion in Frankfort, Kentucky. This year's expert speakers and topics include the Federal Reserve on FedNow, ePay resources on forged and counterfeit checks and suspicious activity reporting, Ascent and FX on foreign payments, Strategic Resource Management Inc. on building your core strategy, and of course ICBB on our own products and services. You don't want to miss it. Register now at icbb.online/event-details/banks-operation-opportunities-meeting. Since that's a bit of a mouthful, I'll include the registration link in the show notes. We hope to see you there. So we hit on chatbots a little while ago, and I know we experimented with those some at the Marketing Directors Forum on the website. So, I mean, do you have examples of how like an AI-powered chatbot or virtual assistant can benefit community banks in terms of customer support and engagement?
Sure. Yeah. So I have to be careful. So I've had the privilege of being a contributing author to 3 editions of WSI's Digital Minds book. And in the last edition that I wrote the chapter on what was referred to as conversational marketing or chatbots. So while it's maybe a couple years old, I still have a lot of chatbot related stuff in my brain. So I'm going to try to be as brief and to the point as I can. But thinking of a chatbot, I first think of there's 2 options. Actually, there's 3 now that ChatGPT has come along, because I think a lot of people refer to that as a chat bot, but I think that's more of conversational technology leveraging AI, which would be really cool to see it deployed into a website, which I know that they're working on. But in a ChatGPT world, you're using an engine that's been trained based off of knowledge, in this case, the internet, for everything prior to September of 2021. And you're asking it questions and you're going back and forth. And in theory, that same AI-driven experience could be developed based off of the information that resides under just a specific bank URL. We're actually in the process here at our office trying to figure out how to do just that for our customers that we've built websites for. The chatbots that are a little bit more traditional in nature are the ones that have the ability to access a database or a repository of information and some pre-selected chat conversations that can fire up hey, what brings you to our website today? How can I help you? And you give them an answer that allows for them to say, I'm interested in mortgage. I'm interested in online banking. I need to talk to somebody about a deposit account. And so they select those. And in most cases, those have been developed through a manual decision tree and some back-end GUI interface where you create boxes with arrows. And if somebody answers this question, you go here. If they answer this question, you go here. And you have to have a thought process around how that all gets baked out. And there are AI tools that are being built into those systems that will help you understand that decision tree or that conversation tree a little bit better. But all of those need to also take into consideration the fact that they're engaging with a human being on a website that has a question or a concern. And if the bot isn't doing a good enough job of answering those questions, it needs to do an even better job of recognizing that and getting you connected to a human in the bank to help you answer the question or to give you personal assistance. And if it's Sunday at 4 o'clock and there's nobody in the bank that's available, needs to do a good job of explaining that, we're really sorry, but all of our employees are off for the holiday or off for the weekend or whatever the case is. Give us your information and we'll get right back with you the morning of the first next business day. And make sure that you live up to that expectation and be able to deliver on it. And so I think consumers continue to enjoy a chat experience. You look at how much phone calling you do on your phone versus how much texting and messaging you do. My bet is you probably do more text messaging than you do phone calls. We like the asynchronous nature of chat-based communication, where I can go to a website, I can send a bot a message and wait for the response and go on and do what I need to do. Open up another tab, continue doing my work, sending emails. And then when the bank or the business has an opportunity to respond back to me, I can then engage. If I send them a form, I have to look for an email. If I make a phone call, I'm going to be put on hold and I can't really do anything else. But a chat is going to give you that capability of being able to have those asynchronous conversations and work with your customers in a way that they are likely now preferring to get support. When I go to a website, I immediately look for a chat option if I have a question, because that's my go-to. And I'll typically just type in the word human to see if I can get to somebody on the back end, or I'll test the bot to see how intelligent it is and if it can really get me some good information. And if not, I'll still type human, just because having a conversation with a person, even though it's through a bot, is my preferred means of getting support these days.
Community bankers, beware of Eric coming to your chatbot. He's testing you.
Coming to a bot near you. Be warned. You've been warned.
So you'd say that, chatbot is another kind of application of AI that still needs a lot of human oversight, or do you think that will change?
I think it will change. I mean, as technology gets smarter, there's a term that a really smart, and I hesitate to say this out loud on a podcast because I don't want him to get a big head, but Lee Wetherington over at Jack Henry, director of strategic insight, is a good friend of mine. And he's used the term uncanny valley in presentations in the past. And I've worked it into some of my discussions as well. It's even mentioned in the book, in my chapter. But it's when technology tries to act human, but you find out that it's not human, and you've gone into this uncanny valley is what it's called. And the result of when you realize that what you thought was human is not, you actually have a more detrimental result, and it can do more damage than good. And so when you're using anything that's AI based, I think you need to be very careful and conspicuous in your correspondence with the visitors that you are talking with a bot. And we've seen some banks that have named their bot, and given it its own persona, and it comes right out and says, I'm the customer service bot. You've got Erica from Bank of America. Green Penny jumps to mind. They've got a bot named Penny, but it's very clear that you're communicating with a bot. But if you want to get to a human being, they make that possible. So there's never that, I think I'm talking to a real person, and then when I'm not, now all of a sudden I'm disappointed. You just need to be really careful of that.
Yeah, I've heard the term uncanny valley, and I think it definitely applies when you realize that you're not talking to a human.
Yeah. And
It's
it's
like,
and I've been there. You think, and you get those robocalls that you answer, and they say, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And you're like, "Good," and then you realize that there's a bot on the other end, and that just makes you angry because nobody likes to be fooled. You don't, and even if it's not intentional, you don't want anybody to ever think that you are trying to fool them. So be very transparent. We've seen businesses now starting to put out AI policies. We're working on one right now within our office that just indicates what we do and don't use artificial intelligence for. We use it for brainstorming, we use it for ideation, but it is something that we use as a tool like everything else. And we're being very transparent with our customers so that they know if they're being charged for blog content, we didn't just hop into Chat GPT and ask them to create a blog, or ask it to create a blog and then give that to a customer. It's gone through a process of rough draft, information, review, editing. Kind of goes back to that transparency and genuineness related to the uncanny valley. What is it that you will and won't use this technology for? And then tell your customers and make sure that they know what's going on.
right. Do you think community banks need to do the same thing when they're using AI across operations areas, not just in marketing, but maybe in their, credit analysis or in, this, that, and the other?
You know, that's a really good question. I don't know, you know, again, I go back to the yellow hammer example, but we never really disclosed what was there. We didn't talk about the product itself. If we had called the customer, hey, Madison, our platform has detected some unusual activity on your account. We're just calling to verify a few transactions for you. It was more of a, if you asked, well, how did you know? Well, we use some technology that looks at information and compares your transaction activity, and it looks at similarities and differences. And it's more of a conversation there. It really depends on how much you're relying on it and what your customers are asking. I know from an agency perspective, and this is me as an agency talking to banks that likely are working with agencies, you should have that conversation with your agency if you're using one. If they're not proactively bringing it to you, you should maybe ask that question. Hey, with AI coming along, just curious, what are you using AI for? How much of the content that you're creating for us is generated by AI? What's the involvement from a human's perspective that you are still adding from a value? Us, AI doesn't. You can ask them some of those questions, or you can just ask them, how are you using AI, and sit back and see what they say. And if you get a deer in headlights and they're like, we're using it, but I don't know how much we can tell you how we're using it. To me, that would be a red flag. And I would be a little concerned, because you want someone that's going to tell you, give you access to analytics, show you the campaign data, and tell you what they're using and not using AI for. So I don't know as if it's something that you have to disclose to your customers as a bank, but it's certainly a question that you should be asking of your vendors as to what level of AI they're using in their services they're providing to you.
Any lack of transparency with vendors, I can speak especially to marketing, but like any lack of transparency is a pretty big red flag, I think.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about some of the different applications of AI, from chatbots and customer engagements to marketing, credit analysis, fraud detection, personalization, things like that. And for maybe our community bankers who are listening, and maybe they use some of it, and maybe they're starting to awaken to its possibilities. They're like, okay, like that's great, but I still got to implement this thing, and how do we do that? What are some key considerations that community banks you think should keep in mind while choosing and implementing different AI solutions, just to ensure their compatibility with all the infrastructure they already have in place?
Yep. 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 Well, I think first off, it's important to meet internally within the organization, within the bank, and have a candid discussion with the various areas of influence and what concerns and opportunities individuals in the bank feel exist. And if your IT department is going to dig their heels in and say, this is never going to be used in our bank because of these risks, then you either have some learning or, different ways. Okay, maybe we can't use it on our own network, but can we create a sub network that's not connected to any of our bank computers? We know of some banks that's how they have to access their social media in order to be able to post bank updates on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. They've disassociated a computer or a series of computers with their regular network that's got connectivity to Fiserv or CSI or Jack Henry. And they've got that technical break between the social media world and the bank world. And that might be something that you'll have to do. I think reading content, listening to podcasts like this, obviously. I want to give a plug to friends of mine over at the Marketing AI Institute. They've got a really great podcast. They have written a book that is Marketing Artificial Intelligence. They have a big conference coming up in July of 2023. So looking at just sources of information and then getting in and being comfortable just playing with it, and create a free account on ChatGPT. If you want to pay the $20 a month and get the plus account, it's not that much of an investment and you get access to some really cool features. It's amazing what you can get for $20 a month. That same technology 10 years ago would have cost you thousands of dollars to be able to do what it's doing. And just do some experimentation and have maybe even a small task force, much like you may have a marketing committee. Maybe you create an AI committee. I know within WSI, as a global agency network, certainly our focus is on the banking industry, but I've got colleagues around the globe that focus in all sorts of different industries. And our corporate office, based in Toronto, has created a task force, and we get together twice a month and we talk about what's changing in the industry, where things are, who's getting questions, examples of things that are kind of cool that we've heard about, and we have some discussion on that just to learn and teach and educate, and make sure that people are understanding what is and what isn't AI, because it's that very same process that we helped banks through several years ago as it relates to social media, is bring people together, talk about what you see going on over at Facebook, what's happening on this new platform called Instagram, or should we be thinking about Snapchat? And, it's that just understanding what kind of a world we're living in and seeing what's going on and being comfortable enough to just play with a few things in an environment that your bank is comfortable playing in, knowing what data not to share and not to share, and what level of connectivity needs to be there.
So, what potential risks and challenges once they start this task force and try to get implementation of some of these AI functions going? What risks and challenges will community banks potentially face, and how do they mitigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the bankers that I've talked to, the biggest risks that exist out there are their risks and concerns around privacy and what the technology has access to. And that's whether they have access the technology, whether the technology has access to the information that you're putting directly into it, where I'm uploading information, I'm posting content into ChatGPT and asking for it to analyze it. That's an obvious, the data is in the platform, or any of the AI related platforms for that matter. But I know that there's also questions if you access those systems on a computer, what other access does that system have on your computer? Does it have the ability, much like when you install an app on your phone, you're giving it permissions to your contacts, you're giving it permissions to your camera, your photos, your camera roll, your microphone? are there things along those lines that you need to evaluate in the terms and conditions on the platforms to know what is and isn't being accessed, and have those documented, and be comfortable with the level of exposure that you are, I say, potentially introducing into the organization. So hopefully that helps.
You mentioned privacy. Are there other like regulatory or compliance issues that community banks should be aware of when they start looking at AI? Or is it mostly about privacy, or are there others? And then how do they navigate that?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any regulatory. I know DC's been talking about this as a concern. I know that there's some groups that have cropped up that are concerned about the impact of AI just on the human species and society in general. But I don't think that there's anything that's been regulatorily delivered to the banking industry that we need to think about or worry about from a compliance perspective. I think much like when we talk about social media or digital advertising or content on a website, it goes back to any existing regulatory or compliance related requirements that are already on the books that we need to be cognizant of. So if we're getting in and using artificial intelligence to draft advertising related content, we still have to be aware of things like trigger terms and disclosure language. And the technology is not going to know, Chat GPT is not going to produce, most likely, a compliant version of a certificate of deposit disclosure or disclosure language that you need to have on a landing page on a website for a home equity line of credit advertisement that has all the necessary elements that are going to be there. So you still have to pay attention to those things as a banking professional. And that's where I go back to the expertise is never going to be replaced, because you still need to have someone that understands the industry, what you're trying to go after, who you're trying to attract, what your main objective is, and then the necessary compliance and other sort of disclosure requirements that are there. I don't think the technology is going to have the ability to replace that. If it does, it's still a ways out, in my opinion.
So you brought up an interesting concern. That's, all the concern around what AI will do to humanity. I know I'm hearing that a lot,
Yeah.
which makes me think about how banks can strike that balance between adopting the AI technologies and maintaining the human touch in their customer interactions. Because, I mean, that's where community banks shine, right? That's where they easily outdo the too big to fail banks. You walk in,
Yep.
if for those who still walk into their bank,
Sure.
and they know your name, and they know your kids' names, and they ask, how's your mom or whatever, and
Yep.
they know all this stuff. So how do we avoid losing that personal touch with AI? And I mean, we've asked that question about all of the digital technology that there's demand for in banking, but
Yeah.
we have to
Yeah.
ask the question with AI too, I know.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I think looking for and taking advantage of in the moment opportunities, in person, in the moment opportunities that are happening in real time, live time. One of the other initiatives that I operate in addition to our WSI agency is I run a mastermind community for bankers called the Linked Banker. And we are going to be bringing on one of the actual co-authors this month for a mastermind session from the marketing AI book that I mentioned earlier. And this very same question came up, and it's about how do you humanize, we call it personal branding. And my father, when I was a banker, he said to me, and I still remember this to this day, and I say it a lot, you've probably heard me say it in the marketing forums at least once or twice, but you really need, or you want people to see you or consider you as their banker, not just someone that works at the bank. And that's really when you've developed that personal connection with that individual. I know their name, I know their kids' names, I know what their kids play in sports. Maybe I've gone and watched them play. I know when they're going on vacation. we did a lot of that at Marshall Savings because we were a true community bank and we got to know our customers very well. Looking for opportunities to be human in front of others, even when technology is involved, is going to help keep that human element in place. And what I mean by that is it's not too far in the distant future where I would be able to create a digital likeness of me to be on camera that looks like me, that talks like me. I can use a service like 11 Labs or any other voice synthesizer out there to make it sound like me based off of voice sampling. But it's a recorded video that I can push out to social media that just talks, hey, here are my thoughts about X, Y, or Z. And there's no interaction, there's no conversation. So while it's a way to deliver content, quote, as me, it's not me. And that's where the human touch drops. You flip the coin over, and I mentioned the link banker because one of the things that I used as an example when I was chatting with Mike, the author, co-author for the book, is every second Thursday of the month, we do a happy hour on LinkedIn. It's using LinkedIn's live audio feature. It's a free feature that's available to anybody that's part of the content creator program. I create an event. I say I'm going to do a live audio. It's the second Thursday of every month at 5 o'clock Eastern time. I press the go button. I can do it from my phone on the app, or I can do it from my computer. But it is me. It is not a voice synthesized version of text that I've created. And you can tell that it's me because these are in person. I have no idea what the agenda is going to be. I have no idea who's going to come on and join me for these audio events. I have no idea what topics of conversation people are going to want to talk about. But I'm confident enough in my knowledge around things like banking and technology and marketing, most of the stuff that somebody joining a live audio event would likely be interested in talking about, that I'm okay having that conversation and having that audio event going for an hour. You take the same opportunity for a commercial lender or a bank president or a marketing director and do an audio event or a live webinar where you're bringing in businesses that are asking questions about things. If you know your stuff and you understand your industry and you can serve your customers because you've got the knowledge and the expertise, that's where the human element comes in. And you might have some AI behind the scenes that will help you prepare or give you some research, or you might be using AI to do some stuff that you can then talk about to make it even more valuable. But at the end of the day, I think building more opportunities for these live, in-person, real-time conversations is where any person, whether banker or not, is going to have to figure out how to work that into their brand building efforts, because everything else is going to become so much easier and difficult to differentiate from reality, that these real-time conversations are going to be ones that are going to be probably the only way to know that you're legitimately talking with a real human being behind the scenes. And I hope that doesn't happen for a really long time, but it's those, live webinars, live audio events. I know we're recording this podcast, but you and I have been going back and forth on a lot of different things. And there's no way that I could have trained an AI to respond back to your questions. And even if you provided those ahead of time, no way to know if you're going to ask a modified version or a follow-up. So podcasts and other things like this that tend to be more conversational are ones that are going to be the ways that we're going to demonstrate the human element in anything that's being produced online, in my opinion.
Now you've got me paranoid that I'm not talking to the real Eric. I'm just kidding.
Is it live or is it Memorex? That's a real throwback right there.
Well, and I think that's true for all of, my areas, digital marketing, and there's just a line to navigate anytime you're dealing with technology of losing that human touch. And I think community bankers, especially those who have been community bankers for a long time, have a particular fear of that, because that's their competitive advantage,
Yeah.
and it's a very fulfilling part of the job. But, it's just about finding the ways to still connect and, using technology where it makes things easier, but not trying to use it to replace
Yeah.
the human touch.
There's also going to have to be some responsibility on the bankers, and especially for some of the ones that have been in the industry for a long time, to be comfortable with learning new things and to evolve. And what makes me say that is you're talking, I remember a conversation with a banker that during the PPP process, when businesses were desperate to work with an institution that was going to be able to provide them with some financing through the PPP program, this banker said that they actually had commercial lenders and they invested in a portal that gave businesses the ability to go to the portal, to log in securely, to upload all their documents, to get all the information into the system, to have it analyzed, to speed up the review, analysis, and approval of those PPP loans, to get those businesses funded quickly using technology. There were some commercial lenders that would not give the link to their customers because they felt that the value they were providing their customers was collecting that information and being the middle person. And their fear was, well, if the customer doesn't send their documents to me and they're not working with me, then my value as a commercial loan officer is minimized or eliminated. And then, what am I good for? And it was sad because as a commercial lender, you are not, nor should you really focus on being a document collector. You're a consultant, an advisor, a business partner, a guide to those business customers that you're working with to help them look for opportunities to be better, to manage their money, to help them with financing, to understand their strategic needs, and to be that partner, not somebody that can open a PDF in an email and get it into your processing department. And so those bankers were very intimidated by technology that simply was just collecting PDF documents and financial statements. Imagine what those same bankers are feeling as it relates to AI, automation, underwriting, credit analysis. It's either time for a career change or retirement, or you've got to re-educate your brain on where you're providing value as a banker to your business customers, or any customer for that matter, and using technology to help you free up time to do more of that. Because if you're busy collecting emails and forwarding PDFs, you're not really providing the value that the customer deserves. And that statement can make some longtime traditional bankers a little uncomfortable as it relates to automation or technology or even artificial intelligence. So we have to be ready for and okay with the evolution of where this is headed, or we're going to become irrelevant, and that's not what that's not what anybody wants.
Definitely. I think that's just a mindset shift that will have to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, being willing to learn, and the value providing being less about tasks you complete and more about expertise.
Yep. Absolutely. So
Because that doesn't go away with technology.
no,
That can't be replaced.
no, not at all. And that's, and if you replace all the other stuff with technology, you get to do the things that really make you a valuable banker even better and more valuable. And then I think your value can actually be increased as a result of all the technology that's taking care of some of the stuff behind the scenes that doesn't necessarily add value to the relationship.
And I think that's a really good place to end the conversation, a good kind of positive note to end on. Eric, thank you for being part of this conversation. I think our community bankers are going to get a lot out of it, and
Absolutely.
I hope that they've heard something they can, take back and implement.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, and I also commend you and your team on putting out information for community bankers to help them improve and to help them learn and to grow. So kudos to you for making this happen and helping bankers be better all around the country. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you. It's all part of the mission. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you've gotten some value from this conversation to take back to your community bank. Make sure to follow or subscribe to The Correspondent wherever you get your podcasts and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. See you next time.